Welcome to the 1 Minute Apologist. We interview the world's leading apologists to provide credible answers to curious questions.
Jim, do the gospel accounts disagree?
Well, I think this is something that I would have always claimed on my first reading, though. I'll tell you, as I read through the Gospels for the first time as a 35-year-old skeptic who had experience now working with eyewitnesses, this was one area that never bothered me about the Gospels. As I read them and I saw what people will point to and say, oh, there's a discrepancy, he's saying something different than he's saying, I immediately recognized that they weren't really contradictions, because I see eyewitnesses doing the same thing all the time. Remember, it's not as though we've got one saying A and the other one saying non-A. What you have typically is this account giving you some piece of A, and this account giving you some further piece of A, which come together and make the entire account. And that is so typical of eyewitnesses. I have never had a case in which the eyewitnesses agreed, period. And every time we go to trial, defense attorneys make a big deal out of what they claim are contradictions that kill their testimony, that really render their testimony illegitimate or unreliable. The reality, of course, is that if they all agreed completely, and I've had this happen. I one time had a case where it took me about almost an hour to get to a crime scene where it was raining, and the responding officers put all the witnesses in the back of a car so they wouldn't get wet. And so for an hour, they were sitting together without any supervision, talking to each other before I got there. So you know the problem I had. I get the witnesses out and they give me the same story 3 times. I don't want the same story. I want them to be the messy, seemingly contradictory, confusing accounts that I typically get from 3 eyewitnesses in the same event. My job as the detective is to figure out how these come together, what the perspective of each person was geographically, emotionally, their history, their interests, that would cause them to see the thing slightly differently. And each person is going to come from their own life experience and give me some part of the account strongly and some part of the account weakly. And I'm hoping I don't have 3 people who are wired the same way, because I want to get different strengths from each, the nuances. And so I think as we look at these accounts, we've got to ask ourselves, first of all, how about the worst case scenario? Let's say you're talking to a skeptic who says, I think that he's looks just flat wrong about this. I don't think you're going to find a place in the Gospels where that's the case. And if you examine them and compare them fairly the way I have, you're going to see they are simply variations of the same account. But let's assume the worst. If he was wrong about a piece, and we brought Luke into court, would that make him unreliable? As a matter of fact, we have a jury instruction in California that says that you can have a witness who could be completely wrong about some issue, and you've got to decide if it has bearing on the main claims of this eyewitness. Don't allow that one thing they might be wrong about, especially if they've got a good reason why they're wrong, to disqualify them as unreliable witnesses. And I have never had a witness in any trial who was inerrant. Yet every one of these witnesses was deemed reliable. Now, I don't even think that's the problem we have in the Gospels. I think we have gospel accounts that are both inerrant and reliable. But the point I'm trying to make is, even if I was to give that piece to a skeptic who's objecting, I don't think that alone could disqualify them as reliable accounts.